Good evening, my name is Toby Lepati Mesme. I hope you're well. This is Monday night's edition of MesmePolitics, episode 6, just gone 10pm. I hope you're going okay. All sorts to get through tonight. We're going to be talking about voter suppression, we're going to be talking about the situation in Palestine, but we're going to open up with sort of a recap of the true extent to which Labour really have truly shit the bed to a monumental extent in this set of local elections. Let's delve in, shall we? So, if we are to take a look comparatively, how has Keir Starmer done in his, and I can't stress this enough, first, not local elections for a leader in general, first local elections of a particular leader. How has he done in comparison to other leaders in their first local elections? So we can go back 40 years of comparisons here. We've got 1984, the first local election of Michael Foot. Michael Foot gained 2% of seats, council seats. 1993. So in 1984, that would be Kinnock. 1993, that would be John Smith, 3% gain. 1995, Blair, 14% gain. Right through New Labour, when Labour completely homogenised politics in England and across the UK. Hang on, just got a small technical issue there, all resolved now. Back, during the New Labour eras, when Labour had complete electoral hegemony for 5+ years in England and right across the UK. Well, what do we see? We see 6% gains in the first elections for Hague, Ian Duncan Smith, 4%, Michael Howard, 5%, Cameron, 7%, Ed Miliband, first locals, 9% gains in terms of seats at the first local election in 2011. 2016, Corbyns' first locals. That was and this was dubbed as, disastrous at the time. This is a loss of 1%. What has Keir Starmer lost in terms of council seats? Worst in 40 years. So 2021 local elections with Keir Starmer at the helm, his first locals, a loss of 7%. Okay? Now that is comparatively the worst result we've seen in terms of local elections in upwards of 40 years. Estimated vote share for leaders of the opposition in their first local elections go back all the way to 1981. Keir Starmer's 30% is the poorest percentage achieved in the first local elections of a leader of the opposition on record. Same as, again, people have done worse, but in terms of first local elections for a leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, by all metrics, has performed the worst. Worse than Corbyn, worse than any of the nobodies who were in opposition during the Blair era. Completely, truly dire. An estimate of the national vote share. The Conservatives on 40%, Labour on 30%, Lib Dems on 15%, and others on 15%. Nationally, this would produce pretty much the same seat tally for Labour if it was the 2019 election. A loss for the Tories, gain for the Lib Dems, obviously, but the Lib Dems outperforming these, so I don't think you'd actually see that reflected. In terms of council seats, so the English local elections, Labour have lost 326 councillors in total with a tally of 1,345. Tories have gained 235 with a tally of 2,345. A lot of 345s. Lib Dems on 586 held their own with a net gain of 7 councillors, and the Greens on 151. Big gains for them. Net gains of 88 council seats. Corbyn lost 18 seats in 2016. Starmer has lost 326 council seats in 2021. Truly disastrous. By any metric, these local elections, you can't spin them, okay? These have been a disastrous defeat for Keir Starmer's Labour Party. And it's my view that unless we see real change, right, and they're tacking to the right, that'll make it worse, but a real change in direction, if they don't, And obviously they'll be nowhere near as big or high profile as these ones, but there will be local elections in May 2022. Probably the next test of British public opinion outside by-elections, English public opinion that we're going to see outside by-elections. But until the next general election, I think the next general election will be after the 2022 locals, not before. So I think that'll be our next big barometer. And I think unless there's a dramatic change of direction, if Starmer is still leader and they're still doubling down on this course, the trend will continue. The governing party will make more gains in next year's local elections, and Labour will have egg on their face and probably use it as an excuse to pivot further to the right. Although hopefully we'll see some more gains for the Greens. Although of course we'll have to wait and see. But really, I think the picture, terminally, it looks terminally bad. And going into a general election, someone was saying on Twitter, on its current path, it's set to lose about 39 seats at the next election, leaving them on 163 seats. Tories on 404. So about as big a majority as Tony Blair in 1997 for Boris Johnson. Wholly plausible, I think, with the state of things right now. They're not gaining voters and they're shedding their base. Absolute disaster. They've really shit the bed. Now over to Palestine. There's some really shocking stuff going on. Let's get out of sort of the Western bubble and talk about that. So Israeli forces stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound on Monday and fired rubber-coated rounds, tear gas and sound bombs at Palestinian worshippers. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society said more than 180 Palestinians were wounded, of whom more than 80 were hospitalised, including one person in critical condition. Potential forced expulsions of Palestinians from their homes in occupied East Jerusalem sparked demonstrations that Israeli security forces have heavily cracked down on during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Videos showed tear gas canisters fired into the mosque, and stun grenades were shot towards female Palestinian worshippers outside the Al-Aqsa Mosque itself. The latest violence comes as occupied East Jerusalem braces for a planned Jewish nationalist march through the city later today. Was the idea. I think it's not gone ahead though. This is the annual Jerusalem Day parade, marking the day East Jerusalem was occupied in 1967 and later annexed by Israel, a move not recognised by most of the international community. Really distressing scenes. It's good to see Nicola Sturgeon spoke out on the violence from these thugs in the Israeli security forces. We also saw actually a statement from Lisa Nandy and now a statement from Keir Starmer. Very welcome. The media narrative on these things is, as always, completely, to a shocking extent, skewed in the favour of Israel, right? This isn't a long-term religious struggle. This is an aggressor, an oppressor, and a victim, basically, a victim of settler colonialism. People are being removed from their homes because of illegitimate claims that are being held up in the Israeli courts. Really, you and I probably can't even imagine the trauma, stress, and ordeal these people are being put through. This is an illegitimate act by the Israeli state, the settler colonial Israeli regime. It is the aggressor. The Palestinians are not the aggressors. They are the oppressed people. The oppressed peoples who are being subjugated and removed from their homes. Absolutely disgusting. And please keep yourself educated on this, and please speak out wherever you can, because it's become unacceptable in polite British society to speak about these things, which of course means we all need to speak about them more. And there's a reason they don't want us to talk about them, and it's because if we do, the true hideousness of the Israeli regime, which has been propped up by Western governments for a very long time, it wouldn't have been sustained without Western funds. If we start asking questions, the consent for that pushing of funds over by our government, but particularly by the US, loses its popular legitimacy. So we need to speak about it every chance we have. Now, finally, voter suppression. So government legislative agenda is unlikely to include long-awaited reforms to adult social care. However, in the Queen's speech tomorrow, big deal, Queen's speech, we'll talk about that soon. We'll talk about it tomorrow's show probably. Voters are going to need photo ID for general elections. Now you might say, Toby, What's so horrible about this? Well, let's see why they're doing this. First of all, voter fraud, any metric will tell you, is infinitesimally small. It's so small it's a non-issue in this country and in most other places. So driving licence holders, about 45% of them vote Tory, and just under 40% vote Labour. As for people who don't have a driving licence, nearly 60% of them vote Labour, only about 30% of them vote Tory. This was voters in the 2017 general election by whether or not they had a driving licence. And it is cold, cruel, cool, plain fact that what they're doing here, first of all, there's not a problem to tackle, although they can, do populist rhetoric, a bit like the Republicans do in the States. If you've not got nothing to hide, blah, blah, blah. But basically what this is the we're already basically in a one-party state. The Tories have electoral hegemony in England. What they're doing is, just in case you progressive fuckers, get anywhere near any sort of increase in your vote, any prospect of even denting our majority, guess what we're going to do? We're going to mess with the boundaries, but also we're going to make it nigh hard for anyone that's poor, disenfranchised, a minority, economically vulnerable, socially vulnerable. You're not going to be able to vote. Basically, if you're more inclined to vote Labour, you're going to be penalised and prevented from voting. It's really sinister. It is a direct attack on democracy by an increasingly authoritarian government, and it needs to be opposed by everyone. Anyone who believes in fair play. We should be making it easier to vote. The Tories are intent on making it harder to vote. That is it from me today. This has been episode 6 of MesmePolitics. I'm Toby Lepetti Mesme. It's 11 minutes past 10. See you same time, same place tomorrow. Good night.